Charles Ingalls, played by Michael Landon. Then, 37. Passed away in 1991, at age 54. Mary Ingalls, played by Melissa Sue Anderson. Then, 12. Now, 64. Caroline Ingalls, played by Karen Grassel. Then, 32. Now, 84. Nellie Olsen, played by Allison Arngrim. Then, 12. Now, 64. Harriet Olsen, played by Catherine McGregor. Then, 50. Passed away in 2018, at age 93. Carrie Ingalls, played by Sydney Greenbush. Then, 4. Now, 55. Willie Olsen, played by Jonathan Gilbert. Then, 7. Now, 59. Almanza Wilder, played by Dean Butler. Then, 18. Now, 70. Nels Olsen, played by Richard Bull. Then, 50. Passed away in 2014, at age 89. Albert Quinn Ingalls, played by Matthew Labiordos. Then, 10. Now, 59. Andrew Garvey, played by Patrick Labiordos. Then, 9. Now, 61. James Cooper Ingalls, played by Jason Bateman. Then, 12. Now, 57. Isaiah Edwards, played by Victor French. Then, 35. Passed away in 1989, at age 54. Dr. Hiram Baker, played by Kevin Hagen. Then, 51. Passed away in 2005, at age 77. Reverend Robert Alden, played by Dabbs Greer. Then, 57. Passed away in 2007, at age 90. Alicia Sanderson Edwards, played by Kyle Richards. Then, 6. Now, 57. Jenny Wilder, played by Shannon Doherty. Then, 11. Passed away in 2024, at age 53. Nancy Olsen, played by Allison Balson. Then, 11. Now, 57. Eva Beadle Sims, played by Charlotte Stewart. Then, 33. Now, 85. Jonathan Garvey, played by Merlin Olsen. Then, 34. Passed away in 2010, at age 69. Lars Hansen, played by Carl Swenson. Then, 66. Passed away in 1978, at age 70. Adam Kendall, played by Linwood Boomer. Then, 19. Now, 70. Mrs. Foster, played by Ruth Foster. Then, 76. Passed away in 2012, at age 104. Cassandra Cooper Ingalls, played by Melissa Francis. Then, 12. Now, 53. Alice Garvey, played by Hersha Parody. Then, 32. Passed away in 2023, at age 78. Grace Ingalls, played by Wendy Lou Turnbow. Then, 6. Now, 58. Grace Snyder Edwards, played by Bonnie Bartlett. Then, 47. Now, 97. Etta Plum, played by Leslie Landon. Then, 18. Now, 64. Percival Dalton, played by Steve Tracy. Then, 28. Passed away in 1986, at age 34. John Sanderson Edwards Jr., played by Radamas Para. Then, 14. Now, 66. Hester Suter Hune, played by Ketty Lester. Then, 38. Now, 91. Eliza Jane Wilder, played by Lucy Lee Flippin. Then, 35. Now, 82. John Carter, played by Stan Evar. Then, 40. Now, 86. Olga Nordstrom, played by Kim Richards. Then, 10. Now, 62. Sarah Carter, played by Pamela Roylance. Then, 29. Now, 80. Carl Sanderson Edwards, played by Brian Part. Then, 12. Now, 63. Jed Cooper, played by E.J. Andre. Then, 61. Passed away in 1979, at age 64. Laura Ingalls, played by Melissa Gilbert. Then, 10. Now, 62. Belinda Stevens, played by Melora Hardin. Then, 10. Now, 59. Chris Nelson, played by Gil Gerard. Then, 33. Now, 83.